Welcome, bent riders around the world. My name is Gary Solomon, and you're watching the Laidback Bike Report. Well, I'm coming to you live from the Laidback Bike Studios in Pickerington, Ohio today, where we produce this monthly webcast that can be watched live on YouTube right now, as you're probably doing, or it can be watched later on. Now, here's how you can help us out with this broadcast that we do every month. If you look in the lower right-hand corner, you'll see a little red subscribe button. Please click that. Go to the YouTube channel, subscribe. And if you hit the subscribe button right after that, you'll see a little bell pop up right in the subscribe square. And that will give you a notification if you click that when we go live and when we have a new video. So it helps us out if you do that, and we don't have to make so many social media calls. So subscribe and click that notification button. That would really help us out. You might also notice in the upper right-hand corner, there's a little letter I, a little white letter I that indicates information. And if you click that, it will give you a couple of cards about the Laidback Bike Report, one of which will be the website. So you can click on that and go directly to the laidbackbikereport.com website, where you can learn so much more about what we do, past shows, future shows, bonus material, all kinds of stuff that we do there. So click the little white I, and that will get you more information. Well, we would love for you guys to be a part of this webcast today and join and be a live participant. How can you do that? Well, if you are watching on YouTube right now and you look to the right, you'll see a little chat box. It says live chat. If you type in the live chat, we will see what it is you're typing, so you can correspond with any of our panelists, and you can ask questions of our guests. We will bring them up to the guests. It's a great way to feel part of the program, and we love seeing your comments and your questions. So please avail yourself of that. If you're watching from the website, you can see the chat box right below the live window. And if you're watching on Bent Rider, Facebook, or Twitter, click through to the YouTube site, and then you can find the chat box right to the right, as I talked about. And I think if you're on mobile, you'll see the chat box right below the screen. So chat with us, if you will. Let me tell you a little bit about what's coming up on the webcast today. First of all, of course, we're going to have amazing interviews with our special guests, which I'm going to tell you who they are in just a minute. Bryan Ball is with us, of course, and he will be bringing us the news from the Laidback News Desk. Denny's not with us this month. He's down in Florida without much internet service. So we have Sandy Earl with us today, and she's going to talk a little bit about her RAAM experience. She's also training for RAAM this year, the Race Across America. So stay tuned for that a little bit later on. We're looking forward to talking to Sandy. And then, of course, we're going to get into the Google Plus community news of the month and pictures of the month and all the contests that we do there, and finish up. So that's what we got in store. Let me, at this point, introduce the panelists that we have with us today. First of all, from South Florida, we have our media specialist, Carl Kidd. Hey, Carl.
Hi, Gary. Hi, everyone. I hate to tell you, but it's 70 degrees, beautiful weather. Come on down. And a shout out to our #1 fan, my 92-year-old mom, Wanda. Hi, Mom. All right, Gary, take it away.
Hello, Wanda. Always good to have Wanda with us. And now let's go to Salzgitter, Germany, where we have our webcast director extraordinaire back with us again this month. It's Lars Kamm. Welcome, Lars.
Hi, folks.
All right, Lars, man, a few words. He's busy. Next, let's go to Cold Spring, Kentucky. Why not? We're going to see the esteemed co-editor of Bent Rider, the man, the beard, the whole package, as we like to say. It's Larry Varney. Hello, Larry.
Hi, Gary and everybody. It's
Good to see everybody. I'm looking forward to the discussion. It's 50 degrees here and yeah, pretty skies. At least it's better than what it is in Rochester. So good to be here.
And, all right, Larry, what a perfect setup for my segue. And speaking of Rochester, New York, we have the founder and editor of Bent Rider and the anchor, of course, of our Laidback news desk, Bryan Ball. Hey, Bryan.
Hey, welcome to the Laidback Weather Report. We've changed formats, I guess. So it was 4 here, and it's currently 28. So just to keep up with everything.
All right. Well, you know, so for the people that are watching live, this may be of some interest. For the people that are watching this YouTube video, you know, 3 years from now in the middle of the summer, don't pay attention to this stuff. Just skip right over it. All right.
It's historical record.
Yep. Let's go on to introduce our guests, our special guests that we have today. First of all, this gentleman works as a specialist of historic operating machinery in Greenfield Village at the Henry Ford Museum in Dearborn, Michigan. He commutes to work in his orange carbon Quest, and which is a Velomobile for those of you who haven't watched the last few months. And he attracts a great deal of attention with that Velomobile, some of which is unwanted. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about today. So I'd like you to meet Doug Grosjean. Doug, hi.
Hi. Hello, everybody.
And Doug is actually coming to us
from...
Yeah, no, we don't need weather report from Detroit. I was going to say, Doug's actually at work today, though, so he could probably give you a good weather report. But we thank you for coming in today, and stay hydrated. That's the important thing. All right, let's move along. I think we need to go to Canada. Let's talk about a man who owns a small publishing company. Having always been an athletic and enthusiastic bike rider, he turns to recumbent biking after suffering from some health issues. He has now been riding the streets of Toronto in his blue DFXL Velomobile since last May. And now he finds himself the frequent object of attention of the police. I'd like you to welcome Kevin Nesbitt. Hello, Kevin.
Hi, Gary. Hello, everyone. Hi, Wanda. Yeah, I won't bother with the weather report. Just cold, very cold.
All right. Needless to say, the further north we go with our guests, the colder it's going to get. I think it just stands to reason. All right, and for our last special guest, a fellow Ohioan. He's from Cincinnati, and he's known as Ohio's bike lawyer. He's a prolific writer and a speaker on the Ohio bike laws. He also talks about bike crashes, bicycle advocacy, and has worked on related court cases all over America for over 30 years. He spoke at Recumbent CycleCon last year, so he's no stranger to the bent riding world. I'd like to welcome Steve Magas to the Laidback Bike Report. Hi, Steve.
Hey, how are you? It's nice to be here in Cincinnati, where we had all 4 seasons in the last 2 days. So we're in mid-spring right now, it seems like, but it may snow, and I understand there's a sandstorm predicted for later today. So we're good to go.
All right. What do they call those? Haboobs? Well, let's not get into that.
That's right.
Yeah, I think that is what they call them. That's the subject for a completely different report. So, all right, let's start our interview then. Let's start discussing the subject at hand, and we're going to start with Doug, if we can. Doug, can you tell us a little about your bent riding background?
Well, I came into recumbents because my girlfriend was interested in them from a comfort standpoint. Prior to that, I'd ridden probably 400,000 miles on motorcycles. I've ridden in an ecomobile, which is basically like a Velomobile based on a BMW platform. I rode on and off to college, and basically college was 15 miles away in town. I lived in the country. I wanted something faster, so I ended up with an F40 Lightning, which is a 2-wheeled recumbent enclosed bike, kind of a fabric and fiberglass streamliner. Put 8,500 miles on that in about 3 years, and then sold that in order to get the Quest Velomobile, just because it's Michigan, and we get snow, we get...
All right, Doug, seem to have lost your audio for right now. There's a picture of Doug's Velomobile. There you go. Are you back?
Well, I assume that I'm back. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, now we can hear you. So there's a picture of your Quest. We just heard you say that you had changed over to go even faster and for protection from the weather. And that's the beautiful Velomobile that you're riding now. So that's good. So let's talk a little bit about where it is that you ride. Talk about your commutes and where you ride your Velomobile.
Well, most of my miles are actually in Metro Detroit. Metro Detroit is a core city of Detroit and then a lot of suburbs. So I may ride from home here in Dearborn, which is just a couple of miles. But I also often will come down from my girlfriend's house to go to work. Well, that's about a 17 to 18 mile commute. And what people don't realize is that I'll go through 5 or 6 different towns in that 18 miles because of Detroit being one core city and then a lot of suburbs. The end result is that I get stopped a lot because no single police department gets used to me.
All right. Well, let me not pile on here or anything, but let me stop you there. Okay. And because we'll get into that in just a minute. But let's. I know we have a few shots here of you working, and I wanted. So it's clear then that you use this Velomobile as a commuter. What about your car? What kind of car do you have?
Well, the last car that I had was a Jeep Wrangler, but I sold that in October of 2012.
So you have been essentially for 5 years, you have been car free.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So this is, I think we have a few pictures here about where it is you work. If you want to just briefly tell us, because that's an interesting story too. Tell us about that as we go through these pictures, if you would.
I'm not seeing the pictures, so if you could describe them,
okay,
I'll
this
recognize
is, you got a high wheeler here. Looks like you're working on a penny farthing.
Yes, part of my job is historic operating machinery. We take care of the machines in the village that are in use every day. We don't work on cars.
And then, so if you're not seeing these, let me. This is your Velomobile parked inside. It looks like with some of those old bikes.
Okay. And the next one, early 20th century machine shop, Armington and Sims.
Mm-hmm. I think that's another one there. Go ahead, Carl. And your Velomobile parked next to Model T, perhaps a couple of old cars in the parking lot.
Actually, okay, that's actually here in Dearborn after one of the old car festivals that was held here at the village.
Next one, Carl.
So that was out in the public.
And there you are underneath your Quest, making some changes or working on something there. So, and last one, Carl, on that one, I think. And you mentioned weather protection in the Quest while commuting, and there's a picture of you on some sheer black ice, I would say, on a path or something.
With the 3 cracks?
Yes. Where the wheels went.
I was on literally thin ice. It was cracking as I went.
Oh, yeah, I feel a great communion with you there. Go ahead, next one. Is that it, Carl? All right. Yeah, Lars, if you can go back, thank you. And the last winter picture there, I think you can see the snow on the ground there. And the next one, Carl. Yeah, and so here is a picture of you meeting some folks along the way. Next one, Carl. And some more folks. So you do interact. Let's take a second. You do run into people who are astounded by what you're doing and riding. How do those interactions go?
It depends on how much of a hurry I'm in and what they want. I've had people early in the morning that want me on my way to work, want me to pull over for a photo. That's not going to happen. I've got places to go. I've had flat tires where by the time I got a tire off the rim, I had a dozen spectators. Well, at that point, I'm not in a hurry because I'm kind of stuck. But they generally go well. Most people are friendly. They're curious. They don't know what they're looking at. And I'm friendly, so it turns out well, usually. It helps if they're pretty. It looks like it has
from these pictures. All right. So that now will bring us to where I had stopped you. And the question is, when was the first time that you know of that you encountered the police while you were riding?
Well, the first time, I had a couple of traffic stops in my F40 prior to getting the Velomobile. One traffic stop was on Michigan Avenue. They claimed I was impeding traffic. I wasn't. The next one, I was on a bike path. He claimed I had a motor. I didn't. So I've had one for going too slow and one for going too fast. When I got the Velomobile, the first I had, it was 8 degrees. there were wind chill advisories, and I had ridden 13 miles into Detroit to go to a drawing class. And I felt sorry for the police who pulled me over. They looked like they were freezing to death out there. Mostly just curious, and they cut me loose.
All right, let's get to the big question here, the one that's been blowing up on social media lately, and that is, how often have you been stopped, Doug?
The first year that I had the Velomobile, 2015, I was stopped 60 times in 1 year. My record was 3 times in 1 day, and that was a 100-mile day, so I kind of get it, but that got old.
And then last year?
Well, I made a change. When the stops would happen, the first thing the police would ask is, what is this? I didn't like being stopped, so I had a friend make some great big bicycle stickers that I put on the side, bicycle exclamation mark. And that reduced the stops from 60 in 2015 to 10 in 2016.
Because that's the big question, and we saw that picture. That was one of the first ones that we saw. All right, let's we're going to go through here, Carl, if we would, just every few seconds. Doug has given us some pictures of many of these stops, and they're all really interesting to see. So we're just going to take a minute here, as and Doug, you are thinking of starting, or I guess you decided to start a YouTube channel and start videoing some more of these and putting those up there. Tell me about that.
Well, I bought a GoPro camera just because I was concerned about if there were an accident, if there were a traffic stop, whatever. Or if nothing happened that was bad, I'd still have interesting footage. So I've got 2 traffic stops that I've actually recorded on video, and I've posted them on YouTube. One, the police are in Detroit. They're just curious. They mentioned that they've seen one of these at an auto show, never saw one in person. That stop is over in about 30 seconds. The other one, it's a police officer in Livonia. He's certain that he's going to write me a ticket for impeding. I tell him that he needs to check the law, and I offer to show it to him. Doesn't need to see it from me. He tells me he'll check on his radio. And he comes back after a few minutes in the car, and he's much more polite when he returns, and the ticket is not written.
Okay.
So,
Carl, next one, I think we almost through those. while Carl continues to go through those, I've got a couple of interesting comments here on chat. First, Richard Myers, our good friend Richard Myers, who was at CycleCon with us. I was stopped for the very first time in my Go 1 this morning. No big problem, except he thought I should have a flag. That's what Richard said. Well, that's interesting. That's a timely stop there, Richard. And Bryan, go ahead. You want to unmute yourself? Tell us, you've actually been stopped. Go ahead and tell us.
Yeah, I live in like I said, in Rochester, and I had a rotovelo for, I don't know, about a year. I got pulled over, I think, about 4 times, but it was never like anything like, I don't think anybody was even thinking about giving me a ticket. It was just like, what is that? Does it have a motor? And I'd say nope, and they're like, oh, that's cool, go ahead. I think my longest stop was maybe 2 minutes. Like at one point, the guy came up, asked what it was. I told him he went back to his car. I'd never asked for any ID or anything, so I don't know what he was doing back at his car, but then just came out and said that was free to go. But it is kind of annoying, though.
Yeah,
I've never been stopped on a regular recumbent ever. Only when I was on in a Velomobile.
Did that help to make a decision that you made then about Velomobiles, about riding Velomobiles there?
A bit, yeah. I mean, it was also just living in a really tight city environment. I'd found that when I would take it out in colder weather, like when I was commuting and stuff, I just never got up to speed enough that the aerodynamics mattered. So I just wound up going back to a regular bike and thicker clothes. But I've still thought about getting another one. It was a great advertising thing to put my stickers all over it. So someday I'll have another one, but right now I don't.
Yep. I mean, there's no doubt it garners some attention. That's pretty much what this is all about.
The fewest times I was photographed while riding it was like 5. I think that's the fewest times I saw somebody taking pictures.
I gotcha. All right. Very good. So, all right, Doug, if you'll hang on a minute, we're gonna go over to Kevin now, and let's get Kevin's story and see what his experience has been like. Kevin, can you tell us a little about your how you came to riding a recumbent bike and Velomobiles? How did that take place?
I was a fairly avid cyclist, regular upright cycle for a long time through my teenage years, and I like to go long distances. That kind of all came to an end after a run-in with a drunk driver, and I found myself not able to participate in a very safe way on an upright two-wheeled bicycle. And so the challenge became finding something that I could do that didn't aggravate injuries. And after some random Google searching, I was reminded that velomobiles and recumbent bicycles are a thing, and that they're very good for people with these kind of limitations.
Okay, so that prompted you to go ahead and purchase a Velomobile. So tell us when that happened and what did you get?
I put an order in for a DFXL, and that was back in late 2015. And of course, there's a bit of a waiting list for one of those. And so by the summer of 2016, I had it delivered and I was fitted for it. And so that's so I'm brand new. I jumped right in both feet. First time ever in a recumbent was a Velomobile.
Yeah, I recommend jumping in with both feet. I would say is probably a good idea anyway. So now you're in Toronto. So tell me, typically, where do you ride? What's the story on that?
So I'm in what you would call the Greater Toronto area. So I'm not in the downtown area, which comes with a whole set of extra dangers. I'm kind of in the suburbs, and anyone who knows the Greater Toronto area knows that the suburbs are rather full and getting more so as the city grows. So I would say quite heavy traffic. In fact, the highway right near my house is the busiest stretch of road in the world. But there's some good developments in the last few years with bicycle lanes being responsibly built bicycle lanes, which is nice. So that's quite helpful. So I tend to run on main streets in the right lane when possible, or the bike lane if it's available. And it's pretty good quality riding, and people tend to give you, at least here, quite a bit of room and respect. Not a lot of aggressive driving around me.
Oh, that's good to know. All right, let's get into the question at hand then. So can you tell us about the first time that you were stopped by the Royal Mounted Police?
Well, for the first couple of days having the Velomobile, of course, I was very nervous because, there's a difference between going 25 on a bicycle and, 45 or 50. I'm talking kilometers an hour here. And so, I practiced on very small, quiet streets in my little neighborhood. But basically the first day I had it on a main street, pulled over pretty much immediately. And unfortunately, I had read on Bent Rider about people's experience. In fact, I think I was reading Doug's experiences, and making a note to myself that this could happen. Be ready for a stop. And it was what I would identify as a friendly stop. I kind of got three. I think I've got three families of stops I've identified that the police are likely to do, and this was a friendly one. It was a, hey, how's it going? Can you tell me about this? And so, like Doug, it didn't last very long, and it was off and on my way. And that was actually one of the better stops I've had. They've ranged from friendly all the way up to aggressive.
Yeah, and this is going to lead us to my next question here. We'll talk about the stuff in between. So there's the friendly stop. Now, I understand that you had an experience, I believe it was in Indiana, with riding your Velomobile that wasn't quite so benign. Can you tell me about that experience? Actually,
it wasn't Indiana. It was in the south part of the Greater Toronto area.
Oh, forgive me. Okay.
No problem. It was so I was going down a slope, and as people know, Velomobiles tend to hold their speed quite well. And it's actually a defensive measure, right? If I can go the speed of a car, it's just safer to do that than to be doing, say 20 kilometers an hour. And apparently I had, according to the people that stopped me, gone over the speed limits. And so they pulled out to stop me, and it was a full lights and sirens stop. And I felt it was not going to go terribly well when they leapt out of the cruiser. So of course I removed the racing cap, and so they could see there was a real person inside. It wasn't remote controlled. And they approached very aggressively. And this may not compute well with your American audience. But to have someone draw a gun, a police officer draw a gun in Canada is very, very rare. I've never even really heard of it happening to someone I know. In this case, two officers approached from both sides, not on a run, but a very aggressive walk up, and positioned their legs in front of my Velomobile. and had their hands on their weapons. Now, that's, again, in Canada, that's a big deal. You don't usually see that. And the first thing they said was, just what do you think you're doing? And I said, I'm riding my bicycle. What are you doing? And I could see there was a nervousness there, as if they thought I was going to flee. And I noticed a tactic which I've seen that maybe a couple more times, of they put the leg in front or nearby the wheels, so that if I should take off, that becomes a reason where they could draw their weapons, because now I would have to essentially run over their feet to get away. So it was a very and of course the crowd gathering around, you know, and it was a very intimidating stop.
Yeah, well, we're not going to stop there either. So now, what happened after that? So now, clearly, you didn't end up in jail, and you didn't try to run. So, but what ensued?
Well, this is the first time I ever encountered kind of a legal standoff, if you will. Like in the United States and Canada, you can't have a search of someone's vehicle without a reason. And this is the first time I ever got a demand for, you're going to prove to us that this is not an unlicensed motorcycle. There's no plate. You're going very fast. This is a motorcycle, so prove it's not. And I'm not one of those people that likes to hassle the police. I think the police have a very difficult job and should be very cautious at all times. But at the same time, it's not up to me to prove that I have not committed an infraction. It's up to them to show me that I have. And so I refuse to show them my vehicle. I have nothing to hide, but at the same time, I don't like to be bullied either. And it eventually became, I said to them, listen, if this is a friendly request, like if you're just curious, I'll willingly show you the pedals. I'll tell you everything you want to know. But if this is a demand, you know, we're going to have a bit of a problem. So they relented. It became a little more friendly. It was a request all of a sudden to see the pedals. I don't think they were ever quite convinced, though, that it still wasn't a motorcycle. I think I was doing about 70 kilometers an hour when they pulled me over. So I guess that's a little bit unusual for a bicycle. So they kind of went away scratching their heads, thinking that shouldn't. They were still sure there was an engine in it when they left.
Very, very frightening, if you ask me. So it turned out well. I'm glad that it did, but that was the most aggressive stop of any sort of bicycle that I've ever heard of. So like I said earlier when we chatted, it must have almost seemed that you came from a different planet or something, because I don't think they were prepared for whatever it was that you had underneath the shell there. So very interesting, very interesting. All right. Let's go now. I'm going to have a series of questions that I want to throw out to both you and Doug. And I think you may have already answered this one. I'm going to ask how you typically respond to these stops, and there are different kinds of stops, which you've already talked about, Kevin. Doug, let me go to you on this one then. So how do you typically respond to a stop?
Well, typically, at first I didn't know what to do. I really just wanted to be on my way. So what I noticed was the police, when I've been pulled over, 99% of the time, they start with, what is this? Sometimes they're angry, sometimes they're curious, but that's the perfect opening because I have a script. My script is, I'm operating legally. Would you like to see my copy of the Michigan Vehicle Code on bicycles? And out of the 70 stops, 2 said, yeah, I would. And out of those 2 stops, I said, well, first line of the first paragraph, bicycle shall operate as far right as practicable. What am I doing wrong? Educate me. So that's all the others, they just cut me loose after that and, you know, took a look at the bike and then sent me on my way.
Okay. Let's talk more about the specific stops, you guys. Let's go back to Kevin. What would you say was the funniest stop that you had? What was the most humorous one that you had?
Well, I had a stop with 2 officers. It's one of the stops I'd put in the classification of unclear. They're not sure why they're stopping me, and they're refusing to tell me why they're stopping me. But it's clear they want to talk. These are 2 what I would perceive to be officers who are just on maybe their first day out in traffic, and they were dead set on giving me a ticket for something. They inspected every square inch of the outside of the Velomobile. They were going to give me a ticket. In fact, one officer said, we're going to give you a ticket. And I said, well, for what? And they would say, well, you have no bell or no horn. And so I tooted the horn, and they said, well, that's not going to work. And we have no signals. And well, I turned the signal. Well, that's not going to work. I kid you not, 20 minutes of this song and dance. And then they even came back and said, aha, you have no horn. And I said, no, we covered that at the very start. Remember, I pressed the horn for you. It was a more of a, I was laughing, but at the same time, I could see what was going on here. They were going to give me a ticket no matter what. Of course, they didn't. And they wished me well.
That's pretty amazing. And Doug, if I could ask you either the funniest stop, or really maybe I need to ask you about your most confrontational type of stop, because we haven't asked you about that. Which would you say is the most confrontational that you've had?
I hear the question. Probably the most confrontational was the most recent. I was stopped in Livonia, Michigan, and the officer claimed that I was impeding traffic. This one's actually on YouTube. I said I wasn't, that legally I was not impeding traffic. He was certain that I was. He was going to give me a ticket. I offered to show him my copy of the code on bicycles. Didn't want to see it. And what finally defused it was simply he called on the radio and he confirmed what I was saying all along. That a bicycle was legal to operate where I was at.
Okay. And so all these stops and the time involved in all this, and I know at some point it has to start getting to you. So can you talk to me, let's go, I guess, back to Kevin first. Talk to me about the frustration that you feel. Maybe when you get stopped, maybe every time you think about getting into your Velomobile, thinking, oh man, is this going to happen again? What's it like for you?
I like to be. I mean, I'm still working at my ability to do longer rides, even though it's a very comfortable machine. I still have to get my legs back, and so when you're going out, I mean, I'm averaging one stop a week. You always have to add in some time for the maybe I'll get stopped. And if you're planning only a 25-minute ride, if you have to add 25 minutes for a stop into your calculations, you don't know what you can do on the back. Can I go out for my full ride today? Will I get stopped? It's funny. I've always noticed too. It's always when you're on a nice downhill slope, they always stop you. They never stop you when you're doing, say, 10. They always come up alongside when you're doing, say, 65. And it's a kind of feeling of here we go again. And I mean, I've gone so far, I've taken it over to the local police station and shown it to them and said, listen, take all the pictures you want. Please circulate an email amongst the department so they know. And so apparently everyone in traffic has been shown this and they choose to stop anyway. So I feel like there was no progress, even though I went the extra distance to show them that it's okay, it's a bicycle, and yet here we go. I mean, this is where I think we're 19 stops now in 6 months.
Yeah. And we're gonna talk a little bit about what you to do to approach some sort of solution, to come up with some sort of solution for this. So we'll get back to that in a minute. But Doug, I know that you're frustrated because I see it on a fairly routine basis. So you've had a lot of different reactions to the various stops. But talk to me about your frustration.
Well, it's just simply a matter of time. I'm going about my business. I'm going to work. I'm not just out on a ride to show police my vehicle. I've got places to be and things to do. So my frustration tends to be from that angle. If I get pulled over too frequently in one town, something that I have found that is a solution, that it's not 100%, but one town, Southfield, I was pulled over repeatedly in about a week. And finally, I went to the police during shift change and said, look, this has got to end. I'm going to do a show and tell for you once. Send out some people, take photos, I'll answer questions, and then I want you to leave me alone. I don't want to file a complaint or anything, but just a show and tell, and then leave me alone. And they said, okay, and I've not been pulled over there since. That was about 1.5 years ago.
Okay, well, that makes some sense, and that's an approach too. I have a question here on chat from Alan Hoagland that's really pertinent to this. And Kevin, you talked for a minute about the two young officers, whoever they were, that kept asking you every question they could ask you until they could find something to charge you with, and then start asking you the same question again. Well, this says, have any of the guests been stopped by the same officers more than one time? And if so, were they treated any different? Ask the same questions in the follow-up stop. Kevin, you want to start?
I believe that's happened once out of the 18 or 19 stops. I seem to recall the person who stopped me second or third was also the officer who stopped me 12th or 13th, if I remember right. And the questions were exactly the same. And I think it was a result of my technique for describing the vehicle wasn't quite up to par. I actually kind of followed Doug's examples with how to describe properly, so the officer walks away knowing that I'm truthful and that they shouldn't stop me again. Whereas this person stopped me early in my Velomobile career and wasn't 100% convinced and decided to stop me again. This time under the pretext of I was speeding.
Okay. And Doug, has that happened to you? Have you seen the same guy twice?
I've never seen the same guy twice, ever.
Okay. All right. Well, so, I mean, maybe you're making some progress there, I guess. All right. Now, I do want to talk about your approaches, and you both have touched on this. Both your approaches to trying to mitigate this problem, and maybe some things you thought of. So you've talked a little bit about circulating pictures and talking to the officers, and one of our viewers and occasional panelist, Doug Davis, who has a Velomobile, rides down in Dallas area and has been stopped as well. I know he has some sort of app that looks up all the police office or the districts, I guess, in the areas that he's going to be riding, and then he shoots faxes to them. So have either of you come up with any other ideas as far as how you can handle this that would help to alleviate the problem? Go ahead, Kevin, start with you again.
After my experience visiting the police department and asking them to take a picture and circulate it amongst the traffic officers, and finding that didn't work. I mean, maybe it's worked as better than I thought, but I'm still getting stopped a lot. I try to take the opportunity for a stop to be friendly. I think I have a responsibility as a velonaut to demonstrate that we're not aggressive, that we play by the rules, and that it's a fun machine to ride in. But I encourage the officer who stopped me to take a picture and then to circulate that picture to their colleagues. And I'm trying maybe the more grassroots, maybe if they send it to their buddies who are also on the force, it'll be taken a little more seriously than, say, a mass email from the department head. And so I'm trying that. I don't know if I've had tangible results yet, but I feel like that may be a better way to go. So I try to be friendly and invite a picture so they can share that with their friends.
And Doug, what are your future ideas as far as seeing about other than your YouTube channel? What else have you thought of?
Well, I've taken several steps. Here in Dearborn, we actually have bicycle registration. So the first thing I did was I bought a sticker. And I had to argue with the woman at the office. She said, that's not a bicycle. She called a policeman in to decide whether it was. He said, do you pedal it? I said, yes, sir. He said, give him the sticker. So I got a sticker. I don't know if that made any difference. It's about the size of 4 postage stamps. The next thing I tried was the big bicycle decal on the side. That reduced the traffic stops by about 90%. I've also told in certain jurisdictions I've had many stops. Like in Dearborn, I've had maybe a dozen. In Detroit, I've had probably more than a dozen. And eventually it's like, guys, you need to talk to each other. This is not my job to educate you. You need to talk to each other back at the police officer station. I've sent an email to Detroit, never got an answer saying, here's what it is. It's a Velomobile. Here's some links. If you want me to come talk to you in person, I will. Not anymore. And I've not heard anything back from them. I did a similar tactic in Livonia, and that ended the stops for about 1.5 years. And then my most recent stop was in Livonia about a month ago. So there is progress. It's just the idea of sending a notice out to places that I'm going to be, filing a flight plan, that sounds ridiculous for a public road. I may go somewhere spur of the moment. I don't carry a fax machine. So the idea of a flight plan just grates on me. It's a good idea, but for me, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, it's kind of like, why should you have to go through all this? I mean, I'm sure that goes through your head every time. All right, great. Those are some great answers and good discussion there, guys. I want to take care of a little housekeeping here. Carl, if you could back up to the first of Doug's sketches. I want people to see that, and then I'm going to greet some of the people on chat to let them know that we see them. So, and hang on, Lars, as soon as he's ready there. He's going to back up. Yeah, that's it. One more, one back there. That's it. All right, Lars, hit them and let people see these are sketches. Well, Doug, if you wouldn't mind, tell us a little bit about what you do as far as sketching in the Velomobile, and then tell Carl when you need to have them switch.
I'm not sure I understand the question, and I'm not seeing the picture.
I'm sorry, you can't really even see. So these are sketches that Doug has made of him and his Velomobile, and there are more. And Carl, go ahead and hit the next one. And while you do that, I want to greet a few people who we see on the chat that I haven't acknowledged. Wanda Kidd, Bob Brown III, our friend George Varn, and we have Marco Robers from Holland. George Herman is with us. Richard Myers, we had a question from Richard. Scott Radliff, hello Scott, it's good to see you. And let me see. Dam Runner 1, also good to see you back on the chat. And Ryan 228, well, we know who that is. That's our good friend Joseph Janning. And I'm going to ask your question in a second, Joseph. Good to have you with us. And that's it. That's what I see so far. So is that the last of the sketches? I think so. Those are amazing, Doug. We really appreciate those sketches. And I especially like that color one that we used as like a title page for the event on Facebook too. They're beautiful. You do really nice work. Okay, let's at this point move along to some legal help, because that's all we've been talking about so far this show is the law. And who better to answer a question about bike riding in the law than a man who is known as Ohio's bike lawyer. Steve, if you can, tell us a little bit how you got started in your legal practice with bicycle law.
Sure, thanks. Many years ago, it seems like now, back in the early 80s, I was a part of the Cincinnati Cycle Club, just riding and leading rides. And there was a little blurb in the newsletter. It said, help, we're going to lose our corporate charter. We need a lawyer. I didn't do corporate work, but I thought, I could look this up. And it turns out in Ohio that the nonprofit every 5 years has to file one piece of paper. And the club had forgotten to do that for about 20 years. And so the state was getting ready to yank the charter because we hadn't filed this piece of paper. So I said, okay, I'll file it. And they said, hold on. Now the Cincinnati Motorcycle Club has come up. You have to go to the Cincinnati Motorcycle Club and get their permission to use the Cincinnati Cycle Club name. I said, fine. So now I'm 20-some-year-old lawyer, three-piece suit, walking into a little bar called Stormy's on Cincinnati's west side. And it's one of those bars where the motorcycles line up out front, the Harleys. And it's a pretty rough place, and I had to go find some guy named Butch, and he signed off on our Cincinnati Motorcycle Club form, and the rest is history. And I started from that, looking at the legal side. I got a few cases. I started representing some people. I had a case where a guy got a DUI and a bicycle. We had to do some crazy stuff for that. I started getting some serious cases. I had a case of a young boy who was killed on a bike, and lots of injury cases. Those kept growing. I started writing about bikes in law back in the 80s, got involved locally, statewide with a publication called Bike Ohio, nationally with the League of American Wheelmen, started writing a national column, got involved with the LAW's legal team, and it just kept growing. It's always been a small part of my practice. And then about 8 or 9 years ago, I started my own practice. And today it's about 85 to 90% of my practice from 9 to 5 is representing people who get hurt or killed on bicycles. And my 5 to 9 time, as I like to say, is pretty much caught up with bicycle advocacy, working with the league, the Ohio Bicycle Federation, the LAB, and other groups. So I've done about 400 bike cases up to this point.
And you do travel around the country to like testify for cases, even though you practice only specifically in Ohio. Is that right?
Well, I've been called into cases in New Jersey, in Florida, and in other states to help out. or to haven't been an expert outside of the state. I was named as an expert in a Kentucky case, and I was able to help them out. I've worked with Bob Miansky. He did a book, and I kind of helped out and ended up being a co-author of a book called Bicycling in the Law, which is a nice compendium of bike law, kind of thoughts on bike laws and general stuff around the country. So that's been interesting.
All right. Okay. So what we've been talking about today are situations where our bent riders are being stopped by the police, and in these cases, because the police basically assume that their bicycles are something else. So can you tell us, when you get stopped by the police and you're on your bicycle, we've asked these guys what the best approach is. From your legal view, what is the best approach to handle a stop by the police?
I mean, I like a lot of the things that have been said. I mean, it's easy to get frustrated, and this idea of being stopped more than 10 times, more than 20 times, I mean, 60, 70 times is ludicrous. There was a fellow on the East Coast who had a lawsuit against a town because they didn't like the fact that he took the lane on his bicycle, and so they stopped him every time he came through. Of course, those cases never stuck, and he ended up suing them on a civil rights claim. And then that was eventually worked out. I mean, hopefully you don't have to go that far, but I like the approaches that have been talked about in terms of cooperating with the police, but also not letting them steamroll you either. You have to know the law, and you have to be able to speak coherently about it. I like this idea of having the law handy, and I think we talked beforehand. I have my own little Ohio cards that I do, and on one side there's a beautiful painting by a New York artist, Talia Lempert. On the back side I have kind of a summary of Ohio bike law, and I print these up at Vistaprint, and they're very cheap, they're sturdy, and if you want 100 of them or 1,000 of them, I tell people, send me a note and I'll send it to you. But if I was riding something like a Velo and I was getting pulled over all the time, I might think about doing a card like this with it, this is a bicycle, here's what it looks like, and then maybe put the rules on the back, and when they come up, just hand it to them out the window. Just say, here you go, read that, and then let's talk. And or give them 10, they can pass them out to the guys at the back at the headquarters.
Yeah, and that's really what Doug has on that. I don't know, Carl, can you find Carl, if you can find the picture with Doug's handout, the waterproof paper sheet that he hands out. We have a number of pictures of literature, and so the point here is that there's lots of literature out there. You can get hold of Steve. We're going to have all Steve's information, all these guys' information. Of course, as always, the links will be in the discussion section of the YouTube video, so you'll be able to link to all these guys and ask them more questions and find them. But yeah, if you can get your hands on some literature to hand out so that you're prepared. Kevin talked about a little bit earlier. He had seen what Doug had gone through and prepared himself, and it seemed like it worked out pretty well. So
now here's a couple of things, though. You do have to know. I'd say you do have to know the law. I didn't know anything about Michigan law, and so as I'm listening, I looked it up, and it says the definition of a bicycle in Michigan says bicycle means a device propelled by human power upon which a person may ride, having either 2 or 3 wheels in a tandem or tricycle arrangement, all of which are over 14 inches in diameter. Now, I've seen Velos with 4 wheels. I did a situation in Ohio with a thing called a Rhodes car, and it is the size of an Oldsmobile, but it's got 4 wheels, and you pedal it. And a fellow was using it up near Cleveland to pedal his autistic son because the boy just loved it, and so they would ride around the little suburb. And he got stopped by the police, and they ordered him off the road because Ohio's definition was very similar to this. It said 2 or 3 wheels. That thing had 4 wheels, and the cop said, that's not a bicycle. It's not a device. You're not allowed to ride that thing on the road. Get out of here. And so we then shifted our definition from one that looked like this, and we got a new definition past it that says it has 2 or more wheels, any one of which is more than 14 inches in diameter. So
I'm really glad that you brought that up, Steve, because we actually talked a little bit about this question last show, and there is a velomobile that's becoming more and more popular, made in Holland, called Quattro Velo, and a number of our viewers ride that velomobile now. And yes, 4 wheels. That's what the Quattro Velo is. And so, of course, this is a state-by-state thing, but in Ohio, apparently now that's clear to go. But I guess it may not be the case in every state. Is that fair to say?
Well, that's very true. In Ohio, the rule was 2 wheels initially, and then one of the board members on the Ohio Bicycle Federation had a Catrike. He saw this in there, and he went about it himself, talked to his personal legislator, and they managed to get a change in to make it 2 or 3 wheels, and then so that he felt safe. And then when this roads bike thing happened, we were able to get a quick change to get the 2 or more wheels. So it took some work, and you have to know how to maneuver through the legislature sometimes, but it worked. I mean, the other issue that came up was this idea of impeding traffic, and that is it can be a sort of pretextual reason for cops to stop a bicyclist. It used to come up a lot. I had a case back in around 2000, and if you Google Steve Sells, S-E-L-Z, you'll read about Steve Sells' case on impeding traffic. And then there's another fellow, Tony Patrick, who I represented about 10 years later. Tony was accused of impeding traffic, although he wasn't, and was also pulled over by the police and had not a catastrophic encounter, but a very, very unpleasant encounter with the police, where he got into a shouting match with the officer. Officer told him to get off the road. He said, "I have as much right to be here as you do." The officer tried to run him off the road, and then zipped ahead, turned around, pulled out a taser, shot him with the taser. That didn't really work, and came after him with a club, tried to hit him with the club. Another one came up from behind and shot him with the taser, and that one stung him. He went up and collapsed onto the ground, was arrested and charged with felonies, including failing to obey a lawful order, which is a pretty common buzzword in traffic law around the country. Tony hired a very good criminal lawyer. They were able to get those charges dismissed, and the judge, Tony lucked out. Tony could have had a felony conviction, but he happened to draw the only judge in Southeast Ohio who rode the Tuesday night ride with all the other guys, and knew kind of what was going on. So that judge ruled that no, this was not a lawful order. There was no lawful reason to pull him over. He wasn't impeding traffic. You're allowed to ride 2 abreast. And so they threw the criminal case out, and then I sued him for the violence against him, which wasn't authorized. So we were able to get that case settled, but it was a harrowing experience for him.
Serious business there. Let's. I've got a question from Joseph Janning from Germany, asking, and this has to do with impeding traffic, which just keeps coming up and up here. Is there a connection, do you think, between being stopped and riders taking the full lane instead of riding on the right side of the road, or that whole as far right as practicable type of thing? Do you think there's something there about taking the lane that's maybe causing some of this stoppage?
Well, it's something that we deal with almost every day in the cases that I have. We teach people to take the lane. I mean, we don't want people riding along the white line, because if you do that, you're inviting the cars behind you. You're giving them a visual cue that says, hey, there's enough room between that guy's elbow and the lane line that I can squeeze my tour bus through there. And they try to do that. If you're over into at least the right tire track, then that space becomes a lot narrower, and they know they have to go around you. In terms of impeding traffic, what the Steve Sells case said was bicyclists who are going at a reasonable speed for a bicyclist are not impeding traffic, they are traffic. The definition of traffic includes all of the stuff that's allowed to use the roads. And that includes farm machinery, that includes Amish buggies, which we have a lot of in Ohio, and bicycles. Any other device that's allowed to use the road can go at its pace. The faster traffic, the Maseratis don't own the road and everybody else has to get out of the way. The faster traffic doesn't have rights that are greater than the slower traffic. So as long as you're riding lawfully, that question of what's lawful and what's practicable and all that. It's just a mushy bunch of garbage. But, you know, you have to make the best arguments that you can. Now, I just lost a case with the practicable law, and I had the officer on cross-examination. He ticketed my guy for riding in the right tire track. And I said, well, can you please show me where the magic line is that if he'd have been to the right of that, he would have been okay and you wouldn't have ticketed him? He says, well, no, I can't do that. And the judge still found him guilty of that. You know, so those are case-by-case basis. I have a strategy for dealing with those cases that usually wins. It didn't win that time, but we do pretty well on those cases when they come up.
Can you, Steve, I guess at this point we need to know, if we're out there riding, at what point do you think we need some legal representation? What's the line that gets crossed? Obviously an injury or something, but if it's an encounter, what would you say is the point where you feel like you should contact your lawyer?
You know, I've sent out about 10,000 of these cards, and people ride with them in their bags, and I've had video of people handing them to the officer, and then that's the end of it. If you get a ticket, obviously, you want to fight it, then that's the moment. For a situation as the other two guests have encountered, you know, it may not be a bad idea to hire counsel at some point, or find a friendly bike lawyer to help you out, so that your attorney can then make contact with these different agencies and say, look, this is, you know, here's a documented evidence that of 70 different traffic stops that were totally worthless because nothing happened and he wasn't doing anything wrong, and try to create some kind of a record within the department if that's the situation, if you keep getting stopped. Here in Ohio, we have what's called home rule, which means every little burg and community of 100 people can make their own rules for most things. Traffic laws are supposed to be uniform throughout the state, but sometimes these communities make their own rules and they try to change the traffic laws, and so we end up fighting those. If you encounter a situation where you're riding and you find a city that the laws aren't right, or you think they're improper, you can retain counsel to help you out with that as well. But okay. I think knowing what the law is and then having something ready to hand to the officer, as the one fellow does, I think that's as good as you can do without, having your lawyer ride with you in a tandem recumbent velo,
Right. Okay, let me take 1 minute here again. Want to take care of a little more business. Carl, in a minute, when I get done with this little bit, Lars, hit Carl, and we'll see some of that literature as I ask another question. Right. Yeah, this came to me from Pat Franz, and this is some of the literature that he has in the lobby of TerraCycle for bikers that come in to take a look at. Carl, you can go ahead to the next one. There's just the kind of thing that that Steve is talking about. And while he's doing that, let me say hello to Andrew Eichhorn, who's on chat. John and Jackie Schlitter. Hi, guys. It's good that you're here. We appreciate seeing you guys. And Paco Mi. Hola, Paco Mi. So thank you all for being on the chat and joining us today. Also, I see that Sandy and Bill are with us and muted. Hey, we'll get to you guys shortly. So I've muted you, so when I come to you, you'll need to hit your unmute button, but don't do it yet. And hi, Denny. I see Denny joined us. Must have found some kind of internet. So I don't know, he may be sitting somewhere at a Taco Bell or something. What is that? Oh yeah, he's got spotty and slow connection. So just like at home. No, I'm just kidding. So yeah, there's the information that you can find in Oregon, and Steve talked about other places. So, okay, let me finish up here with a couple more. Go ahead, Steve.
I was going to say, if you put that first Oregon slide back up, there's something interesting.
Yeah,
on the orange. Before that, the orange card. Yeah. There you go. This is a little different. This says you may occupy an entire lane and ride up to 2 abreast so long as you don't impede the normal movement of traffic. Now, there's 10 reasons why I object to that sentence. But the main one for our state in Ohio, which is what we litigated with Steve Sells, is the normal movement of traffic includes people riding two abreast on bicycles. So you're not impeding anything. You're part of the normal movement of traffic. And that's kind of the thought you have to have as you're riding is you don't have to get out of the way, at least in, depending on the state law, you don't have to get out of the way of people that are honking at you to get out of the way. Now, it may make some sense for you to kind of queue up and do that, but that's not the law in a lot of the places of the land here. So, sorry, go ahead.
No, absolutely good. Good to know. I was going to kind of finish up here with a quick question about recumbent riders. So I was wondering if you had represented recumbent riders before and found if that there are any special problems, legal issues that recumbent riders may encounter that maybe an upright bike rider might not. Maybe we're talking about that today.
Right. No, I've had one case in recent years with a recumbent who was rear-ended, and it was a little bit of an unusual situation. The car came from, there's 2-lane road, and there's a bike path on the other side of a tree lawn from where the rider was. So the rider was in the road, and there was arguments by the defense that he should have been on the bike trail. That could have happened with any bike rider. And then the car that hit him didn't see him. And so there was arguments made. He had a flag. He had a light bar going across the back. I mean, he had 48 different safety reasons why they should have seen it. But those arguments were made. We were ready for those, and we were able to put the case in a good position and get it settled before we ended up having to try the case. But yeah, the recumbent riders face the same issues that all bicycle riders do. Where were you riding? What were you doing? Were you doing anything weird or unusual? Were you riding where you're supposed to be riding? Why weren't you using the bike lane? Why weren't you using the bike trail? In Ohio, we don't have to do that. In some states, you do. Were you riding two abreast? Why were you doing that? I mean, those types of things come up, and mostly this lane position. If the defense lawyer actually reads some of the stuff that's out there, then they think, aha, we can win the case with this lane position argument. So you have to be ready for that always.
Good. All right, let me finish up. Actually, this is a question that Kevin asked. Kevin, do you want to go ahead and do you remember the question you had for Steve about the one stop that you had where they ended up following you? Do you want to ask Steve about that?
Oh, great. Thank you. Yes, absolutely, I do. I've noticed a change in technique, and I think it has something to do with the fact that I approached the department and showed them my bicycle, and my Velomobile, and said it's a bicycle. Since then, some of the stops have been not really stops. In this one case, this fellow in an unmarked vehicle followed me home, and he actually waited until I was starting to get out. And then he came over and just kind of quote unquote wanted to have a chat. I know I'm not obligated to have the chat, but I generally like people. I generally like officers, so I'm happy to to chat if he just wants to chat. But it was clear to me that this was the exact same kind of stop. What is this? It has a motor in it. I'm going to ticket you for an unlicensed motorcycle. So it basically was a stop, and that kind of got my back up, because if you want to stop me, turn your lights on. And I'm curious. I know in Canada this is kind of a legal kind of gray area, and I'm curious what your thoughts were on that.
I always go back to Breaking Bad. Did you ever see the Breaking Bad show where the wife is meeting with her brother-in-law, and they're in the restaurant, and the brother-in-law is accusing her of something, and she says, "Am I under arrest? Am I under arrest?" And you have to take a kind of an aggressive stance. Is this, what are we doing here? Are we chatting, or are you stopping me? What did I do wrong? And just try to take that very straightforward, nice approach, but a firm approach, so that they can see that you're ready for this. They're not going to intimidate you. They're not going to walk all over you. You're not going to be rude and mean about it, but you are going to be prepared for it. Now we encourage people to use the cameras quite a bit. I've had a few folks who have had very, very good success with those. There was a guy in Maryland who had a camera on his motorcycle. He got pulled over, plainclothes cop, unmarked car, but all of a sudden the lights come on the inside, chases him off the road. The guy gets out with his hand on the gun, pulling the gun out to the motorcyclist. And this is all captured on the helmet cam. And it turns out they didn't, they gave him a ticket for speeding or doing something stupid, but they charged him with a felony for recording the police because their interpretation of Maryland law was you weren't allowed to record the police with your helmet cam. And so he had to fight that then. So you have to check on those types of issues. But the camera makes it very clear, hey, you're on camera, or you get your phone, whatever. I mean, it seems like a jerk thing to do, but it's kind of necessary sometimes. And if you're getting stopped in the same small location, if you're in Detroit, Detroit's a big city. One cop isn't necessarily going to talk to another cop or even know everybody. But if you're in small cities and you're getting repeatedly stopped, that's where I might consider, having my lawyer give a call to the police chief and say, hey, is something going on? Do you guys have problems? How can we help you to help my client not get stopped every time he, rides through your city? So.
Does that do it for you, Kevin?
Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you very much.
That's interesting. Okay. All right. Let's kind of wrap this up with Steve then. Steve, so I guess the overall question then is, if you do end up needing advice or legal representation, and you are anywhere in Ohio, I know who to call, but I know you're also involved with helping people all around the country and helping them find legal representation and advice as well. Tell me a little bit about how they can go about doing that. How can they find out more about the Ohio Bike Lawyer and find out more about who they can talk to in their location around the country? I don't know if you can speak to the world.
Sure.
Right now.
Well, I don't know about the world, but around the country, there's a small group of lawyers who do a lot of this stuff. And a few of them have kind of banded together in a thing called bikelaw.com, and they're dotted around in different states. And I know most of those guys, and they're all good. They're all riders, and they're all good lawyers. I've also encountered lawyers in many states around the country. So if you send me an email or give me a call, my email is bikelawyer@me.com. The website is ohiobikelawyer.com. And if you send me a note and say, hey, I got stopped in Idaho or wherever, then I'll do my best to at least try to find someone who can help you. And chances are the world of bike lawyers is small enough, that I also have a couple of expert witnesses who I've used pretty frequently, and they have a much broader experience than I do going around the world. So I can usually call one of those guys and say, hey, do you know anybody in South Dakota? And sure enough, they've had a case there. So we're usually pretty good about finding lawyers for people. Good.
And your Facebook page. I don't know if you mentioned you have a Facebook page as well.
We do have a Facebook page. I think it's called Ohio Bike Lawyer. If you if you punch that into Facebook, you'll find me. Same with Twitter. I'm on there as well.
Right. There's no need for any of our viewers to jot this down. I will have all that information again in the description under the link section, so you'll be able to go directly to find Steve and get his help on your particular problems. So, Carl, if you could at this point cue up the first of those stop pictures. Yep, right there. And we're going to talk about that. Good. And real quickly here, I want to say hi to NMH Video. Hello. Thanks for being on the chat. And Donald Valesco is back on the chat. Nice to have you guys with us. Okay, so what we have here, folks, are some pictures that were sent to me from around the world, kind of showing us that that we are not alone. So it's not just the U.S., it's not just Canada that experienced this. So here's Greg Cantori from Maryland in the U.S., and there's his stop. Next one. And then we have Fraser Supersport, and I think this may be the guy that Doug was looking at, who does have a YouTube channel and posts all of his Velomobile stops there. Has some amazing videos there. Fraser Supersport. Check him out on YouTube. He's in La Mesa, California. And next one. And Indefatigable in Ontario. So I'm not sure if he's close to you, Kevin, but he probably is. And so he's got an issue. Do you know that guy?
If that's a yellow quest, then I do know him. Yeah.
I think it is. I think that's what it is. What a small country you guys have. Okay, next one, please, Carl. Chris Waring in Great Britain, and he was stopped by a Bobby there, and What do we got? I think, yeah. Okay. So, and there's a little something goes with this one. This is Christian Blessing. He is a member of our Google Plus community and communicates with us from Thailand. And here's what he had to say. It was June 2014. The Thai military had staged a coup in May. I was determined to continue my long-planned ride from Bangkok to Chiang Mai, but encountered military police everywhere. Thankfully, they were all pretty cheerful. This is one of dozens of selfies taken along the way. So that was an interesting one. Thank you, Christian, for showing us that one. And then I had a couple other other submissions. This one also from Google Plus, from Koos van den Hoot. Were you ever stopped? Yes, but that was for a real traffic violation. And I only received a warning because I was on a recumbent and the police officer understood my wish to gain some speed in the city. We have one from also Google Plus community from Kenneth Cummings. Yes, I was stopped once by a CHP officer, California Highway Patrol, west of Las Vegas on the I-15 shoulder. When he realized it was a pedal trike, he laughed and waved me on. And there was also a time when I took the 101 on-ramp and the Highway Patrol motorcycle officer said I could not ride there. I had a state Department of Transportation map that said I could ride there and made the officer back down in front of a trainee, no less. So that must have been a victorious moment for Kenneth. And from Bent Rider, we had Bruce B, who says, Velo riders have plenty of space to stencil the name of each officer that pulls the rider over. It could make quite a conversation starter. So you could just see that like a bomber in World War II having all of their kills put on there, I suppose, is what that's like. So thank you, Bruce. That was an interesting one as well. Okay, so final thoughts. I know Steve had a run, so I thank him very much for being with us. It was very interesting, and I think we may have Steve back on all by himself to talk some more about issues of biking and the law. But I want to talk to Kevin and Doug one more time. And Kevin, did you have any last words? Anything? I shouldn't say last words. Did you have any final thought?
Well, I guess my final thoughts are, I mean, I pass officers all the time. Sometimes I get a wave, sometimes I get a photo taken. 95% of the officers I pass are pleasant people that know exactly what's going on. Maybe they've read the emails that the department sent out. I don't want to make any officers sound like they're horrible people. I think those are very few and far between. It's only a very small number that are creating the situation, and so I think that's the most important thing to say. That this is not an officer department-wide problem. It's just specific officers.
Okay, very good, Kevin. Kevin, thank you so much for telling us your stories and coming on to share them with everyone. I think it's been instructive and helpful for so many people that are either interested or actually undergoing the same kind of problems that you are. So, Kevin, thanks a lot. I hope to see you again.
Thanks for letting me be here. I appreciate it.
And please stick around if you like. You're welcome to stay for the rest of the show, or if you got to go, that's fine.
I'll
and
absolutely
Doug,
stick around.
Okay, sounds great. Doug, if we can get Doug on there, please.
Yeah.
Doug?
My experience is similar to. My experience is very similar to Kevin's. Most of the officers keep on driving. They wave. They're friendly. So I'd say 95% of the officers don't pull me over. Of those that do pull me over, 90 to 95% of them are polite, professional. They just don't see my legs moving, so they just don't know. So I hope that I cut them some slack. There's just a few that are not quite so bright. You know, my girlfriend says there's always a bottom 10%, and maybe that's the ones that I'm encountering.
You have to find out the districts those guys are in, I suppose, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Doug, thank you so much. You're the guy that kind of got
welcome.
this whole thing rolling. Because of your remarkable story and number of stops. It's been a pleasure talking to you and getting to know you a little bit. I'm sure we will meet again down the road sometime. So thanks for coming on and especially taking a little time at work. I know that hasn't been easy for you. So we really appreciate it.
You're welcome. See ya.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Doug. All right. Now it's time to slide along. I think we're gonna throw it back to Bryan. Bryan, are you there? Yes, you are. It's time for the Laidback News Report with Brian Ball. Take it away, Brian.
Hey, how's it going? That was a very interesting segment there. I learned a bit myself. First up, there's not a whole lot of news. We only have like 2 real items, but one is quite lengthy, so we'll get to the first one here. First off, if you own an AZUB tie fly, there has been a recall on that. I'm not exactly sure what it is. I just found out about it on Friday, and I saw a post on someone else's website. But I'm not really sure of exactly all the details. What I know is if the picture's thrown up there yet is the bolts around the titanium leaf spring suspension have been coming loose on some of them. They are sending out some new parts for that, new bolts and new mounts. It's according to what I saw, it's about a 1 or 2 hour installation. I took a look at mine. I ride one myself. That's actually mine in the photos. I've got about 2,000 miles on it. I haven't had any problems. I heard unconfirmed that it may not have even been customer trikes that had the issue. It may have been some of their test trikes there at AZUB. But it's not anything that you should get a long warning before they come loose. It'll start rattling and things like that. But they just wanted to recall it and put some different and longer bolts and different mounts to make sure that it doesn't happen again. So if you have a tie fly, make sure you get a hold of your dealer or AZUB directly and make sure you get the new parts for that. Secondly, the other big news this week was Catrike introduced a new trike, the Catrike Road AR, and I'm going to do a little review of it here because it's kind of unique how they introduced it. This hasn't happened since I've been in recumbents that I can remember. If everybody remembers when Catrike introduced the Dumont, their first full suspension trike, they released the information and it was almost a year before they actually hit dealers. They did the exact opposite this time. To give you a little behind the scenes, I got a call on Friday from Mark at Catrike, said they had a new trike. They were going to send it to me to review. I'd have it Tuesday. Can you have the review up Friday morning? That's when we're announcing it. And I wasn't allowed to tell anybody what it was. I didn't even know what it was exactly until I opened the box and it got here. But what it was is this new Catrike Road AR, which is an update of their road model with full suspension. It has the same front suspension as the Dumont. It's easy just to assume it's just a Dumont with a 20-inch rear wheel, but it really isn't. It's quite a bit different than that. The rear swing arm is more similar to the old Road. It's lower than Dumont. It's a little sportier feeling than the Dumont. And it's a really fun little trike, especially around town with that small little rear wheel. It accelerates a little quicker. The handling's a little zoomier. And with the suspension, especially if you live like me riding on city streets a lot, it's a real weapon on city streets. It takes just enough suspension to take the edge off the bumps, and it accelerates quickly because of the small wheel. With the shorter wheelbase, it's 4 inches shorter than Dumont, which is a lot. So it feels like a tiny little trike, and it's just a blast riding around city streets. And also out on the trail, it was fun too. It still cruised along at a pretty good speed. If I was routinely cruising at 15, 16, 17 miles an hour all the time, I still would maybe prefer the larger rear wheel. But if you're somebody who's not doing that, it's a really good trike. The Dumont also, something I didn't mention in the review that Catrike has clarified earlier, if you're doing a lot of loaded touring, the rack on the Dumont can handle a lot more weight than the rack that they make for the Road. So you might want to consider that if you're going to be touring with heavy bags and things like that. The only downside to it is it does not fold like the Dumont does. They didn't want to do that. The upside to that, not including that folding hinge, is that it's $3,550, which by my calculations, taking a look around, is almost $1,000 less than any other full suspension trike out there. So that's from the major manufacturers anyway. So that's a very cool thing. It's going to be, and it only weighs 39 pounds. So it's a lot lighter than the Dumont. That's like about 4 pounds than the Dumont is. 4 pounds less than the Dumont is. So it's a very cool, light little package. It's a very nice looking trike. It doesn't look much like the Dumont. It looks more like the old Road. The cruciform is shoved up under the front seat, so it's pretty easy to get in and out of. It has the same adjustable seat system they have on most of their trikes now. And it's a very fun little trike. I was quite impressed with it. And I'm kind of interested if people want to put in the comments. I thought it was, how do you feel about them just introducing it out of the blue instead of teasing everybody beforehand? I know, seemed to me, I've talked to people before, it seems like most consumers really like it. Most of the dealers are kind of okay with it, but they would have liked to have known in advance if you have a Road on the floor or something like that. But let me know in the comments what you think about that. And that's all I have for this week.
Hey, Bryan, I thought you had mentioned in your review on Bent Rider that that this is actually going to replace the old road.
Yes,
is
it
that
is.
correct?
Yes, it is. Yeah, yes, it is. It's only $400 or $500 more than the old $400 more than the old road. And I know, having visited Catrike's factory, they're very about, they only build trike when your dealer orders it. That's when they start building it. So. And they have reconfigurable jigs and things, and I can kind of see if it's only a few $100s more for the front suspension. They just didn't see that many people would still want the old one, and so they didn't want to keep building them both side by side. And the very common question I'm asked before you ask, Catrike did say that no, this front suspension is not something you can put on another road like you can with the ICE system. Catrike does theirs different, and the whole front end geometry for their full suspension trikes is different than it is on the unsuspended ones. So the last I heard, this was when the Dumont was out. I didn't ask this specifically, but I know when the Dumont came out, they specifically said, we will not sell you just the front suspension piece unless you show us that your old one broke. Like, they're not going to let people try and modify their trikes to fit the front suspension system.
Very good. Okay. How interesting is that, folks? Yep. So if you want to read the full review, head to Bent Rider Online. Bryan did a great job, as he always does, reviewing the new trikes and bikes that come out.
And one more thing, too.
Sure.
As I said, I only got it on Tuesday and had to review it on Friday, so I didn't get as many miles on a test trike as I usually do. I usually try and put 200 or 300 miles on them, but it's February, so I only got about 40 or 50 on it. So I will be doing a longer term review of this and the Dumont and the Tie Fly in the spring once I get some more miles on. Okay.
Well, and speaking of more miles, thank you, Bryan. That was perfect for this segue. We're about to talk to a couple of folks who know something about putting more miles on their recumbent bikes. Sandy, oh good, Sandy and Bill, you're there and you've unmuted, so we'll be able to talk. Are you there? Can we hear you?
Yes.
Excellent, excellent. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is Sandy Earl and Bill Spaeth, and they're Red Pearl Racing. They're known as Red Pearl Racing. They're in Humboldt County, California, and they're going to talk to us today a little bit about what RAAM is about and their history with RAAM and their future with RAAM, because I think we're going to find out that they are actually doing the race across America. So, Sandy, I guess if you want to start, can you tell us a little bit about your history with RAAM and Bill, you chime in whenever you like. I'm not sure how you guys are going to do this. It's all you, and we've got those pictures. We've queued up Bill's, I think, to start out with. So you go ahead, Sandy.
Okay, so I've had a history racing solo RAAM. I have not had an official finish, but Bill and I are going to go back to finish that business. Here in June, we're going to be racing RAAM. We will be the first two-person mixed team to finish RAAM on a recumbent. Oddly enough, that category has never been contested before, so we're gonna go and put up a really nice category record. And obviously, first of all, we're going for an official finish, and then anything faster that we can do is icing on that cake. But gosh, we like frosting, so.
Yeah, me too. Sandy, could you, if you wouldn't mind, just back up a little bit? I think most of our viewers are pretty well acquainted with RAAM, but maybe not everybody. This is an ultra racing subject. We talk about ultra racing pretty routinely on the show. But if you could just briefly tell us what RAAM is, and what was that first year you made that attempt?
Okay, well, first of all, RAAM is literally the race across America, and it is literally across America. We race nonstop from Oceanside, California to Annapolis, Maryland. Teams have a cutoff of 9 days to make that journey. It's just over 3,000 miles. And so Bill and I will be racing it relay style. We'll be racing, one of us will be on the bike, on the clock, round the clock, till we get there. I've had 2 solo attempts. One was on an upright bike in 2002, and Then in 2009, I switched to recumbent bikes and made an attempt, solo attempt in 2010. Made it almost to the Mississippi River before I had to drop. And
can you tell us what kind of recumbent bikes do you guys ride?
Happy to tell you, Bill.
We got the Schlitter Encore 20s. There's my bike. Nice red Q ring on the front of it. A little more bling and stuff. We're the first ones to get them in the U.S., we think. And they're great bikes. Fast, stable, corner really well. They're really good on the flats. You start taking off and they just want to go fast. So it's really, their geometry is really good for handling and for maintaining a good speed down the road.
And just not to interrupt, but I just want to let you know that John and Jackie are watching today, and they're on the chat. They said, we like frosting too. We can't wait to watch you both. So there's that's from John and Jackie. So go ahead.
Yeah.
Hey, Jackie and John, come up to Annapolis, see us at the end. We'll have some frosting for you. You can eat some frosting with us at the end of the race.
Straight out of the tub, baby. So no, we had to order these bikes sight unseen, because they didn't exist. And I mean, it just speaks volumes to the kind of people that John and Jackie are that I had. We just didn't have any qualms. We knew they would handle great. We knew they'd feel great. And they've bested every expectation that we've had. We've just had a ton of fun on them.
Yeah, we used them.
Go ahead, Bill.
We used them at the RAAM World Champion Time Trials in Borrego Springs this last November, something ever. And we set a new course record on them on those new bikes and stuff on it because they're nice, really good.
I thought you were going to say fast because I think they can be fast too.
Yeah, yep, definitely fast, and they climb well too. So it's I mean, the Borrego Springs doesn't have much of a hill, but there's a little bit of a hill there in one spot,
and there's probably a few hills somewhere between California and Annapolis, I think, too. That
maybe.
You may have so
we did do raw a couple years ago, and so we got at least the first third of the course kind of figured out. At least I've seen the first third of the course.
Okay, we've kind of touched a little. You talked about Borrego Springs and such. I want to, if I can, get just a feeling for what your training is like. How do you train for something as enormous as a ride across the country as fast as you can?
Well, so you just said two different things that are very important. One is to race all the way across the country and as fast as you can. And so we're doing kind of a mix of training. We do some long rides, but not as many as you'd think. We do some really stupid things like ride for an hour and rest for an hour on stationary trainers in our house for 2 days. And it's just a matter of getting your nutrition dialed, getting your all of the pieces put in place a little bit at a time.
And all those miles. I mean, it's all about getting miles in ahead of time.
Yeah.
And alternating, we're going to try to go every hour or so, off and on, going across with a sleep break. And you got to body has to get used to being riding, then shutting down for an hour, and then getting back and ride again, and shut down again. People that go straight long rides, they get off the bike, they're done, their body goes, hey, time to recover, time to sleep, time to, take it easy. You get back on the bike, and your body's going, whoa, wait a second, what's this?
Because it's time to go, and then it's time to go, and this time to go, isn't it? All right, let's. That's really interesting too. Let's talk more specifically about the ride. Lars, can you hit that slide for us, please? And I want to talk about your specific ride. There we go. So, can you see the slide that we have up there on Red Pearl Racing? Yeah. So you have some sponsors, and you also are looking for donations for a cause. So how does that part work?
Well, so I'm a health educator, and I work with a great local charity that's called Food for People. And one of the programs that they have is called Backpacks for Kids. Backpacks for Kids sends food home with kids who are in school. They get a backpack full of food that takes them through the weekend. We don't think a lot about how kids get increasingly breakfast at school and they get lunch at school. And kids whose parents don't have, for whatever reason, the means to feed them over the weekend, sometimes those kids go hungry. And I'm enough of a curmudgeon that I really believe that people eating is a right, not a privilege. And I've also taught in settings like recovery centers where you ask people, you know, did you ever go without food? Did you ever walk home from school hungry because you weren't going to have dinner? And if you're ever in a room where more than half of the people raise their hand and they're in drug and alcohol recovery, it kind of tells you something pretty important.
Okay, so it's near and dear to your heart, obviously. So
Yeah.
besides this great quest of yours,
Yeah.
you also want to do some good alongside your ride. So it's all about donating to Backpack for Kids. And so we're going to, of course, put the link to that as well. So if people want to support you, they can support Backpack to Kids and of course follow your ride. So I'll also link to that website. So what's the best way, do you think, for folks to follow you when you're riding RAAM? I don't mean literally following you. I mean, I mean online.
You literally follow us, but you should bring sandwiches for one thing, and frosting.
Frosting, right?
Yeah, Nutella makes great frosting. So you can follow us directly on the RAAM site. Race Across America has links to everybody's
Transmitter.
Everybody's transmitter. Everybody is tracked on a transmitter during the race. And for the team races, those are fairly accurate. Sometimes you get, you know, that transmitter will be in the follow car, so it'll be a little ahead or a little behind, but it's pretty good. You can also follow our, we'll be trying to make social media posts to our, both to our webpage and to our Facebook site, which is Red Pro Racing. And
okay,
that's about it.
We'll try to follow you here too, and keep people posted on that. And I hope to be in Southern Ohio when you guys and cool. Probably the cruise bike folks come through if I can, because I'm only about an hour away from there. So I'll see if I can find you guys and see if we can have a quick chat while you come through, if you're not in some sort of stupor, which, you know, you could easily be, or if you come through at 3 o'clock in the morning, I could certainly be in some sort of stupor. So in any case, I would look forward to seeing you there and wish you all the luck in the world. And thank you very much for sharing your story here on Laidback Bike Report of RAAM and your attempt at it.
All right. Well, thanks very much for having us.
Thank you.
Okay, guys. Thanks a lot. All right, folks. It's time to get towards the end here. I would say we're running long, but I say that every time, so it's not that interesting to say every month. Here is Amanda Coker. We're going to give you a quick update. Yep, 67, almost 68,000 miles on week 42. 253.3 average miles per day and over 20 miles an hour. She's only got a couple of more months to go. This is an exciting story. Keep your eye on her, Amanda Coker. All right, let's move along then. And if we can, Dana is not with us, unfortunately, today. He will be back next month. And we're going to move along to the Google Plus recumbent bike rider community business. So let's take a look here. And we're going to go, first of all, to tell you, we're going to tell you that we have hit the 1,096 member mark. So we continue to grow, and I've updated that map. And if you're there on the community, we'll have a link to the community again in the description of the YouTube video. Please join and join the conversation. Lots of interesting stuff going on, and I'm going to show you some of that interesting stuff right now as we hit the community contest of the month. So first of all, the picture of the month. I tend not to like to put myself in these things. This is not my picture, but it is a picture of me and my wife. And it was taken by George Varn, and just an amazing spot, and it came out to be an amazing picture. Yes, that's my Sprint X trike, and we are standing there at the Swamp Rabbit Trail, where we rode with George a couple weeks ago. So a great shot that George took of us in front of that. So thank you very much, George, for submitting that, and congratulations to you. How about the video of the month? Well, this is coming to us from obviously Holland. It's called the Windmill de Onrust, and I know we have Marco is on the chat. I have no idea what that means. It's probably just a name. In any case, a cool video showing the moving, working windmill. I think it's working. It is moving, and also the trike there for from Lex Hammers. Lex is the person that took the video. So thank you, Lex. Congratulations. The discussion of the month is Marco Ropers, one of my moderators for the group, and he started a discussion having to do with warmshowers.org, and something that many of the people on the community have used, and many people all over the world have used when touring with their bikes. So interesting little discussion about warm showers and alternatives and the best way to approach it. Thank you for starting that and continuing that discussion, Marco. That's great. And Marco tells me Onrust means restless. It's a restless windmill. So thank you, Marco. That was helpful. And lastly, I've renamed the Pulcher picture of the month to the Pulcher post of the month, because this month Pilius Pulcher submitted some amazing video. This particular video is him on his trike sliding and slicing through the snow. Just amazing, right by the camera. If you have a chance, please take a look at this one. You'll see the snow flying off his wheels as he goes sliding by. Some really, really cool stuff. So good job on that, Pilius. Great job again. So let's talk about next month, what's going on. So we have an old friend coming on who we really haven't had a chance to talk to in depth about his business. It's Jerrell Nichols from RAAM Bikes. Out there in Montezuma, Kansas. So Jerrell's going to be with us next month, and we're going to see what he does there. He does some amazing things, amazing welding and working with frames, and I think we're going to get a chance to see some of that live on a tour. So please join us for that, and I think we'll have another special guest on that too. Can't talk about that just yet. We'll see if that comes to fruition, but for sure, RAAM Bikes next month. So all right, it's time for thanks for those that are still here. I think Bryan had to go. He's got a show, I guess, tonight, and he told me he might have to leave early. But thank you to Bryan Ball, as always. Bryan, thank you so much, you and Bent Rider, for all your support. It's amazing what you do and what you do for us, and looking forward to seeing you at Spetzi. We're going to be hitting Spetzi together this year. So, and let's go to Carl, if we could. Carl? Amazing job once again, lots of slides, and you were back and forth with it. Did a really great job. Thank you so much, Carl, for being with us and doing a great job as always.
You're welcome, Gary, and I feel more empowered now when I ride on that beautiful A1A. So I'm ready for him.
Okay, yeah, I think he's talking about his e-assist, but that's obviously empowering. All right, how about Larry? Larry? Thank you for being with us today. Hope you enjoyed the show.
Yeah, thank you, Gary. I enjoyed listening to all the different people talking, and good to see everybody again, and I'll see you again next month.
All right, that sounds great. Thank you, Larry.
And hi, Sandy. Nice seeing you again.
Sandy and Bill there, they heard you, I'm sure. Yep, they're waving. All right, Lars, hit yourself there, buddy. So great to have Lars Kahn back on the show after being gone for a couple of months, and he was working out of town, out of the country. He was gone, let's face it, and we missed him. So it's great to have you back. Great job directing, picking out who needs to be on the air. You did a great job. Thank you so much, Lars.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks, folks. Very interesting talk, although I've never been stopped with the Velomobile yet, so knock on wood.
Knock on perhaps fiberglass or carbon fiber, I would say. And you need to ride your Velomobile a little bit more to increase your chances, is what I'd probably tell you, Lars. So thanks again, Lars.
Oh, yeah.
And Kevin's still with us. So Kevin, thank you again real quickly. We appreciate you coming on and telling your story of your Velomobile and your stops. Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
And Sandy and Bill, thank you for your wonderful little chat about RAAM. We appreciate having you. And all right, good. And of course, we want to thank all of you folks out there who watched today, joined in the chat. Been a very interactive, exciting show for us today. We really appreciate not just having the people on the panel, but having all of you out there be on the show and be a part of it. It's fun that way. So I hope you're enjoying it as well. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about some announcements and what's coming up. So here's a little update. I got a message from Paul Gallagher, who was on a show a couple of shows ago, the X Shifter inventor, and they're having some changes. They're redoing their marketing. He wanted everyone to know that with the widening use of the technology he's coming up with, they've changed the name of the company from X Shifter to Impulse Wireless Solutions. So I think he's got some other ideas besides just making shifters. So, but the X Shifter is on track to be out around the end of April, he told me. So you can look for that there. And he says he will update his website in a couple of weeks. As we mentioned on our last show, yes, we're going back to Spetzi, Germersheim, Germany, the end of April. We're very excited about that. I told you we're going to be going, and Bryan's going to be going as well. So we'll be there. And we wanted to thank again Tom Floor and Trident Trikes for becoming our major sponsor and helping us get down there. And always looking for more patrons, even though we have our major sponsor. So if you'd like to be a patron and help us get there, we will put a little tag on the video showing you as a patron. So let me know, and we will be happy to add you to our supporters. So again, as we finish up, how can you support us here? Subscribe, again, that little red subscribe button, hit the little notification bell so it'll let you know when we are on live. And hit that little white eye again. It tells you where our website is. You can get a direct link there. And when you're at the website, you're going to find all of the information about future shows and past shows. And the YouTube video. Sorry, Carl, I got out of sync there a little bit. You can leave that up, though. I just want to tell folks that the YouTube video, as I've mentioned a couple times during the show, there's a description section right below it, and I always put a clickable table of contents there, so you'll be able to go to whatever section of the video that you like just by clicking. If you're on the web, if you're on mobile, I think you still have to put your finger down there and slide it. But all the links that we've talked about today. Everything that we've talked about today, I'm going to put those links in that description in the link section so that you'll be able to go directly to them. So, yeah, like us on the Laidback Bike Report Facebook page. And when you do get to the website, as you see there, we've got past shows page. We've got the bonus material page where we put all the pictures and things that we weren't able to get onto the show. There's a little blog on there. If you hit the About section, it tells us about all the panelists that we have on, and of course there's also a place where you can buy a hat that looks just like that. Yeah, I don't know, I'm going to keep that picture for a long time because there's just not one much better than that, Larry. Yeah, so buy a hat if you have the gumption to look just like Larry Varney. $20 and $5 shipping and handling. You can do that on the website. And down at the bottom of the first page there, you can also subscribe, and you'll get an email from me telling you when the next show is coming up, and the day of the show, maybe tell you a little bit of inside information about what's happening on the Laidback Bike Report. So all of that stuff is available at www.laidbackbikereport.com. So until our next webcast from all of us at the Laidback Bike Report, so long, bent riders.